Live. The Hangout on Air is live. Welcome to the spiritual session of our Friday morning hangout for schoolofbookkeeping.com. I am Seth, and I am your accounting angel.
You almost have a halo there, Seth.
Right. Let me see if I can do that, too.
Hold on, I'm going to post the link.
Can't
That is funny.
Posting the link for those who want to join the live panel.
You're a very bright person today. Is this a new home that you're in?
This is Eric's. We're filming today. In fact, we're filming our Finograph course today.
Ah, great.
Doing the live filming. So we've gotten such a busy production schedule that we're filming just about every week now.
Wow.
How's the Xero course coming?
Because we're just starting to really crank them out. Like Smartsheet, I wanted to go live with this week. It's been ready all week. I just haven't had the time. It takes time to load everything, all the content up into the website, and and then of course it's a lot of little. It's sort of like digital heavy lifting, if you will, in WordPress. So. Because I've got to get all the posts in there, link one lesson to the next, and make sure that the links are working properly, and and then set up the course table. Oh, Gina's Mickey Mouse. So it's just a lot of work, and it actually does take it takes 2 to 3 hours for me to get a course live, even when it's only, well, actually, most of the courses we've been doing have been up to 8 lessons even. So anyway, Smartsheet will be live for sure by tomorrow, by end of day tomorrow. I'll probably get up early and get it up there. Fridays, if I don't get to something by Friday, I tend not to do anything on Friday because Fridays are kind of a dead day. A lot of people we've noticed just don't seem to be kind of around. Fridays, people I think want to just get whatever work done they have to do and then get out and hightail it for the weekend. But then funny enough, Saturday, a lot of people seem to be active. So,
Interesting.
So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. But yeah, so we've got a good timeline going now. Smartsheet going live again, like I said, probably tomorrow, and then Finograph after live filming. And by that time, usually I've got all the screencast stuff done. Then our videographer Perry has to do all the post-production stuff on it, and that takes like a week. So Finograph will probably go live next week, and then this week I'm going to be working on our course on Cogniview's product, PDF to Excel. So I don't know if you guys have had a chance to play with that much, but it's a really, really cool product. Yes, sir.
When's Xero coming out?
That's after Cogniview. So we have Cogniview, then Xero, and then actually if you go on the site, if you go to schoolofbookkeeping.com and click on courses, you can actually see it, and we have it exactly in order in terms of when things are going to be released. We don't put the release dates up for a number of reasons, not the least of which is the fact that, if something, God forbid, goes wrong and we have to delay because we have to, re-edit video or something, we don't want to sort of promise something that we can't deliver.
So do you have a blooper reel on your outtakes?
I'm sure he's got
yeah, Perry put one up Perry put one up at the end of the year for last year's bloopers, so Perry keeps track of all that stuff. So yeah, we've got, let's see, Finograph, oh, I take that back, they're not in order, I thought they were. They used to be, I guess we've moved them around a little bit. But Cogniview's next, and then, we're in alphabetical order now, that's why. I guess that makes sense if you're looking for something to have it alphabetical, because it's not like you're going to know what our production line is. But yeah, so it's Cogniview is next. Then we've got Xero, and I don't even know what's next after that. I want to say that we have Sage after that.
I actually use Cogniview. I like it quite a bit.
Isn't it great? It's such a cool product. It's the way you can kind of scrape a bank statement and how easy it is to convert that into a raw Excel data file. And of course, what you can do with that is just awesome.
One time I used it for QuickBooks where my client had invoices with the same number, but they were different. And so I basically took pictures of both of them, converted them using Cogniview, converted them to Excel, and then did subtractions to see what was the change.
Cool. You know, it was funny. I was at a client's yesterday, working with somebody who, is a designer. The client is an interior designer, and it was one of her staff who is, she does. It's funny because she kept talking about doing modeling, and of course I'm thinking financial modeling. What? But she's talking about actual visual modeling, like taking an image of a chair and making it into a 3D image, so you can look at it from different perspectives, and I guess how they want to upholster it and refinish it and all that stuff. So, I say that to make the point that she's not somebody who I would necessarily expect to be well-versed in Excel, but then we were working on a budget for one of their jobs, and I put it in Google Sheets so that we could collaborate in it. And I was thinking, oh, that's so cute. I noticed a website up. I want to say it was called like Excel Easy or something, and it was a page that I guess helps you figure out how to work with fractions in Excel. And it was kind of funny to me to see that. Different perspectives and I guess how they want to upholster it and refinish it. Oops, somebody's replaying me. So, I say that to make the point that she's not somebody who I would necessarily expect. Whoever's playing the Hangout video, you can stop. Anyway, we actually have a lot to cover, so I'm going to kind of jump right into things today. As you no doubt saw, the topic is trust accounting, and we're going to look at it both in QuickBooks Online and Xero. I was up late last night working on this, and I was encouraged as I was getting into Xero, and I knew I could do it in QuickBooks Online. Xero, I figured I could do it. I just hadn't actually ever done it before, so that was the one thing that was, maybe somewhat uncertain for me.
Seth, I think it's you. Everyone else is muted.
Jump right into things. No, it's not, because then it went away. So somebody muted themselves at the last second. So anyway, I was encouraged and excited once it sort of all came together in Xero, and I was able to produce. I was telling some of you guys before we went live that I came up with a report in Xero that I think is so cool. And I'm glad Laura's joining us today, because it was funny. Last night as I was preparing for this, I had saved in Evernote an email that Laura sent me quite a long time ago, and I had put it. I put it in Evernote, and this is what I love about Evernote. As far back as that was, in about 30 seconds, I was able to call up the note, and I was able to, because Laura had challenged me to do this a long time ago, and she said, her claim was that you can't really do it or do it properly in QBO, and I said, no, I think you can, and I'm going to actually pull up the Evernote version of her email. And Laura pointed out to me that the real trick to this was getting the three-way reconciliation done, which means essentially that we have to have a bank trust account whose balance has to equal the client trust liability account, and that also has to be able to be reconciled with the individual client trust ledgers, right? So that's your three-way reconciliation. Now, you can job cost in QBO, so that I knew I could handle it that way by setting up our clients, our customers as customers. And the funny thing to me is, trust accounting, I think, from a bookkeeping perspective, is about as easy as it gets, because nothing really has to get categorized. Everything goes through the client trust liability account. Now, and I get that there are, things like costs that the lawyer might advance, but those just get billed or reimbursed back out of the trust account when the time comes. So I'm using the example that comes from my own direct experience, which is that I had worked with a PI attorney, or what we call an ambulance chaser, for many years, and that was my experience learning, and I did it with him on the desktop edition. But knowing what I know about how to use QBO, I've always known that I could put it together in the same manner. So the reporting is a little different, and I think a lot of people who are maybe of the mindset that you can't do this, perhaps just haven't spent enough time around the QBO reports to understand really how to do it and how you can do it. So I'm going to share my screen and show you what I came up with. So let's go entire screen and share. Got the wormhole. So if y'all could let me know, if somebody could unmute and just confirm that you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Beautiful. And then I got to do present to everyone. Okay, so I can't see what's going on in the chat, so you can talk about me and say what you want.
Nice.
So you've got on screen the email from Laura. Notice when it was from. It was July 28th, 2014. And she had just, after we had a conversation about doing this, she said to clarify the reporting needs, all the reports should be able to be run as of report date to give the needed three-way reconciliation and trust bank, trust liability, or trust bank equals trust liability equals client trust balances. If these three numbers do not match, there's been a posting error which needs to be corrected. Not only do the sub-accounts create it, so here's, now we're going to get into a question of form, and this is really where, you know, it's up to you how you want to do this. My personal preference is to create the client trust account in the liabilities and create sub-accounts for every single client. And Laura's comment, and I agree with her, is that it can be very cumbersome, especially if there's a lot of clients. Now, of course, once a case is closed, I make that inactive so it disappears off the balance sheet. But there is a way to do it, and because I know this is a lot of people's concerns, I didn't do it with the sub-ledgers. I did it where we have one client trust account, and what you have essentially is you use the customer list so that you can job cost within the client trust liability, so I can run a report that subtotals by customer and get my individual client trust ledgers effectively. So you can see in the customer list how I've got it set up. And I did this, I set up a customer called client trusts, and then I put each one within that. You don't have to do it that way. The only reason I would say, or the use case where I would say you should do this, is if and where you have a situation where you have other kinds of customers of a law firm. Let's say it's a law firm that does, that handles trust accounts among other types of legal engagements, such that they might have to distinguish here are the client trust customers versus other customers. You know, that's the thing I can think of. So, but just to keep it super organized, I figured let me organize it this way. So we have client trust, and I have 4 clients so far. I have Harry Accident, Jay Walker, Joe Bones, and Max Settlement. These are my clients.
Nice. I love the names.
Aren't those great names? I really actually worked hard at coming up with those. It took me a good half an hour. So let's go to reports, and let's go to my custom reports. And here's my client trust liabilities report. Let me run it and show you what this looks like. So as you can see, I've got the client trust liabilities account subtotaled by customer, and poof, you effectively have your client trust ledgers here. And there's Harry Accident. His settlement proceeds are in for $75,000. Jay Walker's in for $100,000. Joe Bones, big case, $1,750,000. And then we have Max Settlement, whose case has been completely settled and all the payments recorded. So as you can see, he's got his settlement of $50,000, the payout for the court fees, and for the actual attorney's fees on the case, 30% I did. And then the difference, of course, is what ultimately gets paid out to the client so that this trust ledger zeroes out. So let's see if I've successfully accomplished what Laura suggested, which is the three-way reconciliation. This report comes to $1,925,000, right? And I don't know if you guys have seen this, but in the accountant version of QBO, you can open up a new window from here. New window, right there in the company menu. So let's run the balance sheet and see if I've got my $1,925,000 here. $1,925,000 in the trust bank account, $1,925,000 in the client trust account. So that all works, and it works beautifully. Now the question is, and I saw this in the Facebook thread from, I guess it was yesterday, that sort of inspired this week's topic, that somebody said, oh, but it gets really cumbersome when the case is closed, and the comment was something to the effect that you can't get this off the report. But I'm going to disprove that theory. I'm going to show you exactly how you can get it off this report. And in fact, when I was doing my research last night and really playing around with this to get into the nitty-gritty of how this can work, I discovered something really cool. So here's how you do it. If I go to customize this report, and notice here, this is how I created the report, right? It's basically I'd run the balance sheet, I clicked into the client trust liability account, and over here I said group by customer. So that's how you get it in the form that you already see. And of course, then you can set your dates however you need to. And also, having run it from the balance sheet, it should show a trailing balance if there is one based on whatever date, period you set the dates for. Then we come into the lists, and you can get straight there, of course, by clicking here on the left where it says lists, right? And over here right now, by default, because this was a brand new file that I'd set up, there was no need to restrict anything. But now I want to restrict it. I want to get Max out of there. And so what I'm going to do in a minute is I'm going to make Max inactive. But making Max, in fact, let me do that first. Making Max inactive, as you're going to see, doesn't get him out of the report. So I go to Max settlement, because he's done. He's all paid. And I'm going to go make inactive. Then let's go back to my custom reports, client trust liabilities. He's still there. Oh no, what do I do? And my first thought when I was doing this last night, because it's been a while since I've done this in QBO, was, oh, well, let me just filter it and tell it to not show anything that's been deleted or made inactive for that matter. But there's no such option. I tried. So here's what I did do. I go into customer, and instead of all, I'm going to do select multiple. Now notice what happens, and you're not going to see it this way initially. Initially, yours are going to all be here. Right? So you got to add them in. But notice who's not here. So let me say OK. And in fact, let's go to customers and let's make all the setting. Because I want you to see what this looks like, from the perspective that you're going to see, where when you haven't really played around with this yet. So I'm going to go back and make him active again. And this is also an important thing to know how to do. When you're in the customer list, the settings wheel here allows you to choose this option, which says include inactive. So then I can find Max settlement and make him active again. And then if you're like me, you want the inactive ones gone the minute you don't need them anymore. So let's go back to reports, custom reports, client trust liabilities. And of course, he's still there. We're going to go to Customize. I'll go to Lists, Customer. Now we're going to say Select Multiple. Notice Max Settlement is in here. I guess it's just it's going to remember because I had set this before. But once he's active, he's in here. So watch what happens now. So he's active, he's in here, but it's only based on selected clients. Of course, you could come in here and just remove him. But I'm sure people are going to say, and I would agree, that when you have 50, 100 clients on the books, that's not something you're going to want to have to deal with, because then I've got to go to the customer list, make them inactive, then come here, find the customer in this list, and remove them. And that's going to be annoying after a while. So let's say OK, but we can see that Max Settlement's in here, and that's important to me. I want you to kind of see how this works. So let's go back over to Customers. Let's make Max Settlement active, inactive again, rather. So he's gone. Back to Reports, Client Trust Liabilities, and Customize. Now watch, this is what I discovered last night that I thought was really cool. So now if I go in here and select Multiple, he's gone. But notice this message down here. It says some deleted customers were removed from the filter list. So, and what I'm about to show you is, and you're going to see the proof of it in a second, is once you make a client inactive, or for that matter, if you've made 10 inactive, all you have to do is go back into this area of the report customization, bring up the customer filter list. The ones that you've just made inactive will be off the list, and this message will be here. And then once I click OK, and I click Run Report, watch what happens. Max Settlement's gone. So that's how you get an inactive customer off the report.
Amazing.
So all you have to do when you set it up this way is set it up the first time, include every single customer in the customization under lists, right over here, and it's going to drop down and it's going to say all, even though, but once I click in there, it shows me that I've actually got it set to select multiple. So then all you have to do is just go in here and click OK and run report, and anybody that you've made inactive will be gone. And guess what? If I make somebody active again, I don't believe I even have to go into the customization. I think they'll just come back onto the report. Let's test that theory. I'll make him active. Reports. And yeah, he's back. So if you need to bring one back, and I've seen this happen. I worked at the, it's funny, you're going to see when I show you the Xero version of this. Xero has a cool feature where you can create different kinds of contacts lists. So, you know, QuickBooks, you have customers, vendors, employees, and in the desktop version we have other names. We don't even have other names in QBO, I don't think. No, we don't. In Xero, you can create all kinds of lists for your customers. So it's funny because when I worked for the PI attorney that I worked for many years, I say worked for, he was a client, I would notice that there would, more often than I was comfortable knowing about, let's put it that way, the same people would be back in with new cases. And I said to him, I was like, are these people just accident prone? And he says, I guess so. So, because what would happen is the same client would come back with a new case. So in a case like that, we can make them active again. Their old case information will be here, and then it's up to you. But you could theoretically just use the same version of the customer to, deal with the transactions on the new case. I can see where some people might not want to sort of commingle the cases. So in that case, what I would do is I would name the customer max settlement and put some kind of a date in there. Maybe put the settlement date inside the customer name, and then create a new customer so that you can keep them separate that way. But the other way is just make them active again, and poof, he's back on the report. So that to me is really cool. It means that once you get this set up and you only have to do it once, all you'll need to do ever to have the clients whose cases have settled come off this report is go make them inactive and then go customize this report. And I'll show it one more time. You customize the report, you go into the select multiple option here under customer and just click OK. He's back in there now because I made him active again, remember. But just click OK, and anybody who's been made inactive will now be pulled off the report. So let me stop sharing my screen for a minute and see if anybody has any questions, comments, concerns, if anybody needs therapy.
Therapy? I think we all need therapy.
Well, sure.
Everybody else is staying on mute.
Okay, so I'm going to take everybody's silence to mean that what I've just shown you is absolutely wonderful.
Mariette's got a question.
Yeah, I think he's ignoring my question. Oh my God. Okay, so here's my question. Why are we using the client and then sub-client as the trust liability name versus just using the file number of the case as a regular client to keep track of all the transactions?
You can set that up however you want. When I worked with my PI attorney client, we just use client names. But you can certainly, in the customer list, use the file number or whatever you need to use to refer to the case or client.
No, but what I'm trying to understand is, are we trying to have the client trust and then only client trust activity under that customer, and then every other kind of transaction related to that case in another customer? Are we having two customers for the same case?
No, you could use the same customer, because even if you have to advance, let's say, case costs, like in the reality, I put case cost in there as though it was paid out of the settlement proceeds. The reality is those costs are usually advanced by the attorney while the case is ongoing before it's settled. So you're going to write a check, you're going to job cost it to that same customer. Then when the case does settle, I'm going to run a P&L by job to see what costs I've advanced and then recoup those out of the trust fund. So you can use the same customer because you're just job costing it. And the only reason it shows up on the client trust liability report is because I've run it through the client trust liability account and tagged it to that customer. So if I book a payment to a company for, let's say, a court, for case costs, and I job cost that, that's not going to show up in the client trust liability. Like I said, it's going to show up in the P&L by job. So again, when the case settles, I run the P&L by job, I look at what costs I need to get reimbursed, and before paying the client out, in addition to paying out attorneys and doctors and whoever else, we reimburse the case cost based on what's on that P&L by job for that customer.
Exactly. No, I get that. What I'm saying is, like the way I have my attorney set up is that I just have all of their clients as file numbers, and whether it's a liability transaction or payment of fees or reimbursement, it's still hitting the same client customer name. I don't have like a client trust name and then another name. They're all the same names.
Right. No, that's exactly what I just said. I wouldn't do it any other way.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
Yeah, no, that was my whole point, is you can use the same name, because the concern I might imagine would be using the same name would throw off your client trust liability account, but it won't, because if I write a check and I hit an expense account and job cost it there, it's not going to show up in the client trust liability. So everything should still reconcile perfectly.
Right, exactly. Yep. Okay, I just want to make sure I understand what you were doing. Perfect.
All right, let me check our Google Plus page here, see if we got any questions in the peanut gallery. Larry says he's going to try it on his cell today. Hi, Larry. I hope you're having a good Friday. And then Katie says she has a call at 8, but she'll join in after. I guess she's still on her call. Okay, so who wants to see this in Xero?
Yay. Sure. Absolutely. What about desktop? Like, can we just talk for a minute about QuickBooks Desktop?
Desktop is so old school, Joanne. I mean,
I know.
come
You
on.
know what? I'm sorry, but in my area, everybody's on desktop, and
I'm
moving them.
kidding. Desktop
and
is how I
I-
always did it. It's going to work exactly the same way.
Okay, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. So yeah, I got a couple of lawyers, and they try to set up the QuickBooks stuff themselves. And this is cool that you're doing this hangout today, because they charged me to, after tax season, to get their trust stuff set up correctly because they were doing it all wrong.
By the way, did you notice the name of my law firm?
Yes.
Did everybody see it?
It's like rob 'em and blind 'em or something like that.
It's law offices of Blind'em, Robb'em, and
Rob 'em,
Bill'em.
bill 'em.
Perfect.
I thought it'd be like which, him, and how.
Yeah, that's what everybody was saying in the chat. Never let lawyers do accounting. The problem is that they weren't doing the accounting, but they were trying to let their secretaries do the accounting, and I think that was even a bigger problem. So.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah, I know.
The funny thing is, the PI attorney I worked with for many years was a guy who's, I find, first of all, a lot of lawyers they seem to be among the slowest to adopt technology for some reason. Many of them are still using AOL and Earthlink email accounts, which is always a bad sign. And Eric here just said what I was about to say. A lot of them are still using Corel Word Perfect. They won't use Microsoft Word. And I know part of the reason for that is there's things that it can do on screen when you're writing that I think Word doesn't do. So they've just gotten very comfortable with doing it in Word Perfect. But it's always so funny to me to see how behind many lawyers are in technology. And this guy in particular, it was almost like he was against it. When we used to get into arguments sometimes because when I started working with him, I was emailing my invoices to him, and he was like beside himself, like how can you email me invoices? Can you please print them and mail them? And I said, absolutely not. I haven't printed and mailed an invoice in years, and I'm not about to start doing it now. I said, here's what you can do. When I send you the email with the PDF attached, you can print it.
Yep. You know, I do find though that a lot of it has to do with I think there's a certain point, a certain age, because I find, at least in my area, that there are, like, I call them old school. You know, they're, I would say, over the age of, and I don't want to offend anybody, but over the age of 60 that are still practicing, and they are still, everything's been working with, you know, paper and pencil for them. And they don't want to change their ways.
That I get, but this attorney was a young guy. He was, I mean,
really,
he's maybe a few years older than me. You know, he was not, you know, so. But he had a very low tolerance for frustration.
Right.
And you know, so he didn't get technology, and he just, you know, he had a real hard time adopting technology. I mean, it took him forever to get off of Windows XP.
Hey,
So,
I still have 2 computers on XP. Don't judge.
no judgments here.
It's after tax season. I already have them on order. I'm just not going to install them until after tax season.
Seth, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Before you leave QBO, can you show us again when you were showing the trust bank and the trust liability, how you got the report to come out? Because I can get the trust and the liability report, but then sometimes I want to just see the liability on my balance sheet, because I actually have my liability per file number, so the account is huge, and so I don't want to see the trust bank. I want to be able to create a custom transaction report just with all the trust liabilities on it, and not the trust bank, but I can't get the trust bank to get off my report.
Okay, so I'll show you how I'll build the report from scratch for you, so you can see exactly how I did it. How's
Okay,
that
perfect.
sound?
Awesome, awesome.
Beautiful. So we're over here. Can you see the balance sheet?
Yeah.
Okay, so right off the balance sheet, you're going to just click into the client trust accounts, right? Click into the liability. So no bank account here. And then we're going to customize the report. And under group by instead of account, we group by customer, run report. Done.
Okay. I'm going to do it on my side. So while you're playing, I'm going to go do it on my side and make sure it works perfectly,
Okay.
beautifully.
She doubts you, Seth.
No, I don't doubt you. I don't doubt Seth, but I'm going to test it. So 1 second.
All right. So meanwhile, let's take a look at Xero. So you guys see my Xero balance sheet? Same law firm, right? So what I did was I replicated the exact same scenario, just so it would be familiar. So we have, again, on the balance sheet, the bank account $1,925,000, client trust liability $1,925,000. Somebody's echoing me. So that part works perfectly. Now I want to show you the reports. And I got to say, I love the reports in Xero. I didn't used to love them as much as I love them now. So I'm going to just go right into all reports for now. And I have it here in my draft. My drafts. And let's look at the client trust liability transactions. Everybody see that? Now, the way this comes together in Xero is a fair amount different, even in concept, than the way it comes together in QBO. Because as any of you who've used Xero know, there's no sort of direct job costing in Xero in terms of the fact that I can't associate a customer in a transaction. So the way this comes together there, first of all, I do still set all the customers up as contacts, but this is what I was talking about earlier, and this is one of the things I love about Xero. You can create your own custom group. So I created a customer group called Accident-Prone People. And here are my customers, same people. Harry Accident, Jay Walker, Joe Bones, and Max Settlement, all there. So you definitely want to set them up as contacts, and you don't have to be silly about it like I am, but you can certainly create a custom group specifically for your client trust people. Then what I did was I created what's called a tracking code. So in Xero, you go into settings, and I've customized my settings menu so that it's included here, but for those of you who haven't done that, just go straight to General Settings, and you'll find Tracking here. And you get 2 tracking categories. Last time I checked, it was limited to 2. So 2 tracking categories. So I created a tracking category called Client Trusts, and of course there I added in each of their names so far. So every time you get a new a new case, you have to come here to the tracking codes and add the person here. Kind of the same idea as how you have to add them in the customer list. So here you have to add them in 2 places. You have to add them as a category option in the tracking code, and then of course you'll also have to add them as a contact. Now once you have the tracking code set up, then just like we do job costing in QuickBooks where we have the customer drop down, here the tracking code does appear as a drop down in every single transaction. So that's how you bring it together. The concept beyond that is basically the same. I go to reports, I run a balance sheet, and I go into my client trust liability, and I can see it here now. And I'm doing this on purpose because I want you to see. Here I can see everything, but there's no way to sort of customize this. I do have some more options, and I can filter it based on the tracking code. So I can say, you know what, show me the balance sheet or the client trust liability for just Harry Accident. And I can say update, and it will show me only his transactions, which is just the settlement so far. And if I change this to Max Settlement, he's the one whose case has settled. So this would be one way, and obviously you can do. You all know, those of you who use QuickBooks know you can do the same thing. You can, once you've created that client trust liability account that's subtotaled by customer, you can certainly filter it further and select only one customer so that you can get the comparable report here. But I said to myself, still, how do I get a report that works just like the one I did in QBO using Xero? It doesn't have the ability like QuickBooks does to go into a report like this and say just total it by tracking code, right? So I played around with this last night, and I said, okay, I'm going to go into new reports because all these other ones are your kind of standards. So I went to new reports, and I said account transactions. Right? So this is like my transaction detail report. So it comes in. I can choose my accounts. As you can see, I don't have a lot of accounts on the books, but I can show all accounts or just select the one. So I'm just going to select the one. I just want to see transactions for the client trust liability account. And then down over here on the right where it says report settings, I come in, and in my group by, I chose client trusts. And then your columns, of course, you're going to want to customize and say, like, I don't necessarily need the tax in there for this purpose. I don't really even care about the source or the reference. I want the date, the debit, the credit, the description, everything else I kind of want. I know what account I'm in. I'm in the client trust account. So I click Update here, and that's exactly how I get my report. And just so you can see what this looks like when you're booking a transaction, let's double-click one of these to get into the transaction. See, here's a transaction. Notice here's my client trust drop-down. If I go to edit this, then you can see exactly what it looked like when I actually went to enter the transaction. So when you add the tracking codes, it adds the column in every single transaction, like I said. I wasn't making that up. And then you have a drop-down where you can choose exactly who it goes with. So outside of that, it's the same concept. So, you know, and going back to Mariette's question regarding how we did it in QBO, same thing applies. You would just create one tracking code for any one, you know, case, let's say, and then that tracking code would be used so that you can create the reports. And then what I did was, because what do you call it? Xero has the export options just like QuickBooks does. So I wanted you to see what it looks like when I export it to a PDF. I don't know, I'm funny about these things, but I just think this is really cool. I think this looks really professional. I would be very sort of proud to send this to my law firm client to show them what their client trust accounts look like. And then here's the Excel export version from Xero. And I'm showing you this because I feel like everybody's probably already seen it in QuickBooks Online. I wanted you to see what this looks like in Xero specifically. So here it is in Excel.
Yeah, it looks cool.
Yeah, I love the way their reports render. I think they look really professional. Not that QuickBooks don't, but I'm just, you know, Xero, it's a different look, and I like it. All right, I'm going to stop screen sharing. So, what does everybody think? You can all unmute now.
Can you get the QBO report to have that debit credit calculation, like the two columns? Because I do like that. That looks really good in regards to when you're trying to see the liability report.
Let's try it. You know, the funny thing with QBO that I've noticed is some reports let you customize and break up debits and credits, and some don't. And I don't know what the exact rhyme or reason is on that. So let's try it. Let's go to Customize. And under Columns,
Change columns, go up again.
that's right. Thank you, Gina. Yep, in this case we can. So we add the debit and credit. Let's move them down. After amount.
I'm doing that on mine right now. Also, the other question I had for you was, so obviously you're right. It's beautiful. I see the only liability accounts. But here's my question. I still like to see the trust bank because I'm constantly pushing my clients to validate that number. But I only want to see the summary total, not all the transactions. Can I see the total of the bank on top and then the liability split up, all in the same report without exporting to Excel?
I suppose let's try customizing this to include. I think this is probably going to crash the report, but let's try it. If I do select multiple and just select the bank account, so here's Trust Bank, and then I need my client trust liabilities. Client trust, wait, Trust Bank, add. I think this is going to end up crashing it, but let's see.
Seth, I have a question. I came in late, sorry. What base report did you use to get here?
I ran the balance sheet, clicked into the client trust liability account, and totaled it or grouped it by customer.
Okay, so you could, if you wanted to run the bank account and then see it divided by each individual trust account, then you would just zoom in on the trust bank account and then you would separate it by the liability account. So you would kind of do the opposite grouping. Does that make sense? Is that what you're trying to do?
Well, I think Mariette's trying to see, she wants to be able to, I think what she's getting at is going back to what I mentioned that Laura had brought up a while back when she and I had this conversation. We want to be able to do the three-way reconciliation. We want to be able to see the bank account, the total of the client trust ledgers, and the client trust liability account itself to make sure they all agree at all times.
Exactly.
So if I'm not
That's
mistaken,
exactly.
I think so. Mariette's saying she wants to be able to see what the client trust account balance is. I think, Katie, what you're describing will get us back to something similar to this, just approaching it from a different perspective. You know, Mariette, what I might try is maybe just starting with a clean custom transaction report. Or, you know, the other thing you can do actually is, let's try it this way and see if this does the trick. If I run a balance sheet, maybe I can customize this to show me just the trust bank and the client trust. So at least this report, because in this case, that's all you see because that's all I have, because this is obviously just a sample file. But in in the event of a real situation, you would have theoretically a lot of different accounts on the balance sheet, so you want to chisel it down to just those. So if we go to lists, interesting. It doesn't look like I can select
I would
specific
try
accounts.
using distribution account. Where is your distribution account at?
What do you mean by distribution account?
That's a confusing term on QuickBooks.
Yeah, you can't.
Online,
So
but if
you
you look
can't.
at the reports, there's something called distribution account, and if you chose those two accounts, I think it would work.
You can't customize accounts on the balance sheet summary report. You have to run a balance sheet detail report.
Oh, see, on the desktop version you can. Well, and that kind of defeats the purpose, because we want to just be able to see the bank account balance in total.
So why wouldn't you just do a quick zoom on the bank account, and then you would have the total at the bottom?
But that's not going to be any different than doing the quick zoom on here and totaling it by customer.
Aren't you trying to compare the two? I guess I'm not understanding the goal.
Well, no, we're just trying to make sure that when I have the client trust ledgers laid out like this, which is run off the balance sheet again, we're just trying to make sure that when I see that this total is $1,925,000, we'd ideally love to see on the same report something that shows here, and here's the bank balance, and it's also $1,925,000.
Exactly.
Oh, okay, so why don't you run a balance sheet detail report, and then you can filter for those two accounts and have them on the same page? Because you can filter a balance sheet detail, you just can't filter a balance sheet summary report.
Yeah. Where's my balance sheet detail reports? Accountant?
Go to the upper left-hand side where it says Go to Report and type in balance sheet. You'll get to it quicker there.
Oh, good idea, Gina. That's
I
why
have
we
a new
created the big
platform
one.
with a universal search box where you just type in whatever you're looking for and it pulls it up.
I don't actually see a balance sheet detail. I see balance sheet.
Just run it.
What?
Down 1, 2.
That's customer balance detail.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What version are you in? What subscription level is that?
This is a brand new QuickBooks file, and I believe it's the highest subscription.
You might need to, let's see, I think it might be.
I'm in the Plus right now too, and I can't find that report.
Transaction detail by account.
So it's QuickBooks Online Plus.
Seth, look for transaction detail by account. Boom, right there. Yeah, they had to go rename everything.
I see.
And yeah, so then in here you could customize.
Trust. Client trust. Okie doke. And then do we still want to group by customer? See what that looks like.
If you group by customer, it may not be split into the two, but yeah.
Oh, God, I work hard. All right, so there you go. So at least you can kind of see it in total. It would be, yeah. So I don't think it's exactly what Mariette's looking for. I mean, I think what we would love to see is just one line that shows the total bank account balance and then the client trust detail. But you know what? At the end of the day, Mariette, the simple answer to this is I'm going to run a balance sheet, and I'm going to run my client trust ledger report, and I'm going to just compare it that way. In all likelihood and in practice, that's what I'm going to do.
Okay.
So it looks like that's the best we can do for now. That's too bad that you can't filter a standard balance sheet by account, because on the desktop version you can, and I've been able to do some really cool stuff that way, especially with contractors where you have construction in progress, and that's going on the balance sheet until the project is finished. You can assign all that to a job and then filter the balance sheet by job for that one job, and this way you can get a CIP report just for that job. So that's a cool thing that you can do in desktop that I guess you can't yet do in QBO, but I'm sure the time will come when you can.
I read something the other day that someone was talking about this and the inability to customize the balance sheet summary report, and there was some conversation going about filtering it to where the balance sheet didn't balance and the feature not being there so that people couldn't filter it in a way that would make it not balance. Does that make sense? Like if you filtered for asset and liability accounts that didn't balance each other, then when you ran the report, your balance sheet wouldn't balance. Does that make sense? I don't remember the details of the conversation.
Somebody asked me if I'd like some coffee. Yes, I would love some coffee. I'm assuming that was Eric, because it's from School of Bookkeeping. So, by the way, two different people, I think it was Billy Ann in our chat and Ophir, who's watching and posted on the page for today's Hangout, made a good suggestion, going back to the question and the conversation about the how you organize your client list, and for that matter, how you title them. You can have the customer name and then a sub-customer with the case number, and that's actually a great way to do it, especially if you wind up having multiple cases for the same customer. So hopefully now that sort of confirms for people that we can actually do this in QBO and in Xero. And now I have to go write a book for Sleater on how to do law firm and specifically trust accounting in QBO and Xero.
Doug left us. I wanted to talk to him about his new news.
I know, and I was actually we talked at the top of the hour, I was going to actually give him a chance to say something about what's going on, but you probably all got the email by now that the Sleater Group was bought by, I forget the name of the company, it's a very big conferencing company.
Digital Media?
It's called Diverse. Diversified.
Yeah, something like
Diversified?
Yeah, something like that.
Is
so
that
we'll have to
Skeeter can become international?
What?
Is that so Skeeter can become international?
I don't know.
Skeeter
No,
will
I
be
think
an
they're an
international
US-based
star
company.
now.
But my understanding is that they're a very, very big company in the conferencing space. So, and my understanding is that you all know who Flag Management is. Flag Management is actually the company that puts on all your Cal CPA conferences. All the AI CPA conferences are done through Flag Management. So when they have the CPA accounting shows, that's who does it. Apparently Flag helped Doug put this deal together. That resulted in this company buying him. So I actually talked to Doug about it earlier this week, and it sounds like it's really good for him, and he's really excited about it. And from what I understand, and I'll let Doug clarify this next week in case I misspeak on anything, but my understanding is everything's still going to look the same. It's still going to be the Sleater Group, well, not the Sleater Group, but it'll be the Sleater Conference, a diversified company. But they're still going to keep doing what they're doing, and the idea is just with a big company like this behind them, they can grow it that much bigger, and that's the plan.
So would they get more resources to be putting on conferences?
I imagine they now that they own the Sleater Group, they put on conferences all over the place now, so they're going to put together the Sleater Conference going forward.
So it would be less work for Doug.
Maybe we'll get one on the East Coast.
Yeah, could be. And
I hope so.
I don't know if this was discussed specifically. I know that Doug has tossed around the idea, and I believe he's spoken with Clayton Oates about it a number of times, of doing a Sleater Conference in Australia. That would be a lot of fun to go to Australia.
I agree.
But I wouldn't want to be at the conference. I'd want to be in the aquarium.
Seth, I have one more question about the Xero stuff because I came in late. Did you guys talk about the checkboxes on the account setup to enable payments to accounts?
We didn't, because I don't know that I would enable a payment to the client trust liability. That would be that I would want to use the client trust liability to say pay a bill. I wouldn't do it that way. I would just write a check out of the client trust liability account and book it.
It actually works for invoices too. So if you have, like, if you're invoicing your client and then charging their liability account, you can use it as the payment account. So that you have a record of your invoice and then you pay the invoice from the liability account, or from the trust account.
Okay, yeah, so let me show you guys what that looks like so you understand what Katie's talking about.
It's kind of cool, but it only makes sense in certain applications. But I have a client in Xero. They have the craziest business model. They help people that are in prison purchase things and get services out on the outside. So they basically send her money, she keeps it in trust accounts, and then uses the money to make purchases and also to pay the client invoices.
Right.
So she uses it both on
when it comes to trust accounting, I'm very, very careful, and I try to make, in fact, normally I would be very hesitant to even use an invoice with anything having to do with a trust account. It just, the idea of it would make me nervous. But I'll show everybody what you're talking about because I do understand where that could be helpful. So here's the client trust liability account in Xero. And when I edit the account, you want to check this box off down here that says enable payments to this account. So that way Katie's right. Then what I could do is, but again, that would be if I was trying to use this account to record the payment. Wouldn't I, if I'm invoicing somebody, I would just receive the payment on the invoice. So I'm actually, now that I think about it, Katie, I'm not clear on how this helps.
So that lets you use the account as the payment account. So for this particular client, for example, we have different trust accounts for the clients. So you're able to take that client's trust account and put it on an invoice. I'm like looking at it on my second monitor to make sure that I'm explaining this properly.
Because normally if I click enable payments to this account, what that usually means to me is when I want to pay a bill that I've got to pay, I can pay it out of that account, but then I'm usurping the bank account, right? So I do that in a case where I have like a loan account because I paid it, let's say, out of my own pocket instead of out of the company. So I enable payments to this account on a loan account because then I can show that a bill has been paid using that account.
I think I missed whatever you were saying while I was looking on my second screen, but I use it for the invoice too. So if you're invoicing, like I see people asking questions all the time about how to invoice their client from their trust account. So that allows them to use that as the payment account. Does that make sense? So not necessarily on the bill side, but on the invoice side. Let me do something to
test that theory for a minute, because I don't think you need to check this off to do that, but maybe I'm wrong. So let me save it.
And I haven't actually set one up, so maybe I checked the box for the bill side, and I'm just thinking that I had to for the invoice side, but either way, it's really cool that you can pay the invoice from there.
But yeah, let me just test the theory, because I think you only need to check that off if you're going to use that account to show a payment on an expense, on an expenditure, not on a sale. So let's try it. Okay. If I go to create a new invoice.
I use it on both sides. So only for one business do I use it on both sides, though. So
yeah, see, so I can invoice somebody and use that account so that I can capture the, the retainer or whatever it is.
Right, but the payment for the invoice. So like,
the payment for the invoice is just going to come in and get applied to the invoice.
When the payment comes out of the liability account, let me walk through. I'm going to have to walk through this with you and show you my process.
Yeah, because again, when it comes time to make a payment, it's going to. In fact, the payment has to come out of the client trust bank account because that otherwise would be out of sync with the liability account.
Correct. I think maybe the one that I'm referring to isn't a good example because it's not a law firm or property management, so a lot of the trust just accrues up and down. So hopefully I'm not confusing everybody with the method that I have to use for this one unique client with this crazy business model.
Yeah, because the big and most important thing with the client trust accounts here is that, again, the bank account, the liability account, and the client trust ledgers always have to agree. So that means everything has to go through the bank account and the client trust liability account simultaneously.
Yep. I think I
So-
actually have another line on the invoice that balances it all out too, so that's probably where it's throwing off, which is not common. You wouldn't normally do that, so.
Gotcha. All right, 5 minutes left. Who's got questions? You've got questions, we've got answers. I'm like the Radio Shack of accounting.
Nice haircut, Seth.
Thank you.
I like it. I like
Thank
it
you.
short.
I just had it
and-
cut late last night, and I was a little worried because I went in there, and the stylist who normally does my hair apparently leaves at 3 on Thursdays. I guess I've never gone in on a Thursday before. So I had to have a surrogate hair person do it.
Well, they did you well.
I think she did well.
Okay, Seth, I have a question.
Okay, about my haircut?
No, I love your haircut, but I did the debit credits. It looks awesome. But now I'm losing my final balance on my liabilities to match with my trust. What did I do?
Let's go to the videotape.
Yeah, let's go edit the tape. What did I miss?
Let's roll the incredible bean footage.
All right, so let's go back to, oops, I went out of my company and into my company list. Now you just saw all my clients.
Nah, you do it too fast.
Doo-doo-doo. All right, so let's go to reports. Let's go to my custom reports, and let's go to client trust liabilities. So what did you lose? You lost what?
I changed the debit credits, but then I lost my total amount on the bottom that I can verify against my total trust bank account.
All right, so let me change mine to debits and credits and see if that happens. Because do you also have the balance column in there still?
I still have the balance, but it's not giving me a total anymore.
That is making me really sad.
Yeah, I think I probably lost something. I probably took off one of those columns.
Yeah, did you keep the amount column?
Let me see. Oh, probably I didn't because I was trying to clean it up because it was too much stuff. That's probably what I took off. Okay. Well, I'll see right now.
Yeah, because you need to have the amount column for sure because the amount, and you might want to put that after the debit and credit. On mine right now, I have it in front, and then you don't really need the balance. The balance kind of doesn't tell you anything. Actually, no, I take that back. The balance shows you how it gets to 0. So you do want.
I need the balance. I need the balance. Okay, let me see. I'm looking, and yep, there it is. Thank you.
You're welcome. I aim to please. I'll send you the bill.
I still wish I
that.
could click from the balance sheet. Just click on the balance sheet, sort by account, and be done with it. Just so much work to get to this place. It's kind of frustrating.
But once you create it, and then don't forget to save your customizations like I did, so that you don't have to keep doing that every time.
No, I know, for me, but like somebody else, how could some end user that's not, a QuickBooks, QuickBooks Online Pro really know how to do that? It just seems
They don't. That's why
They hired us.
That's the whole point. It's that because that's kind of like I love using the comparison of like an auto repair shop. I wouldn't fix my own car, right?
Yeah, but I believe this is basic. I mean, I don't think someone should have to call me to just build a report to tell them that 2 accounts match.
So,
Why not?
Harriet, something that I've learned is the reason that it seems basic to you is because you're really smart and so it's easy. Like, I have to put myself in check. Like, these things are easy to us because we do it all the time. Like, we earned that knowledge and people pay us for it, and that's okay.
And actually, yeah, that's a very good point, Katie. And that goes back to also what I was talking about at the top of the hour, where I had a client whose employee is amazing with graphic design stuff and making 3D images, but when it comes to Excel, she doesn't know. She had prepared a budget in a spreadsheet without a single formula. She was just manually, adding things up and putting a total at the bottom because she didn't know how to write a sum formula. Why would she? She doesn't use Excel or spreadsheets. And within an hour, I had her in Google Sheets collaborative and formulas written because they had budget totals to work with. So they knew a budget for all the chairs might be $20,000, and she needed to be able to insert and say, well, if I have 2 chairs now, the unit cost is $10,000 each, but if I have 3 chairs, it has to back into the unit cost based on the total budget. So I was able to create a spreadsheet like this for her, and she thought I was like the most brilliant person in the world, whereas to me, that was like, for me, it's very easy because this is all I do all day.
Okay, I agree with that because I was just lost. But if someone's trying to use QuickBooks and just trying to total 2 balance sheet accounts, I mean, that seems like a basic process is all I'm saying. So something as basic as that, I don't feel like anybody should have to call someone else to be able to do something like that. Is all I'm saying.
Remember, it's not quite as basic as that, because the other piece of that is we want to make sure 2 balance sheet accounts stay in agreement while also being able to develop details within one of those accounts and keep that in agreement at the same time. So you're adding that job costing element, which adds a layer of complexity. Plus, if you have 6 different bank accounts on the books and you accidentally write a check out of the wrong account, now you're out of sync. And for somebody like us, it's very easy to get in there and fix. I think for somebody who doesn't do this for a living, they just look at that and say, "Oh my God, what did I do? And how can I find and fix the problem?" They have no clue. So, and I get what you're saying, Mariette. It seems like it should be easy enough, but it's, that's where I think what I've tried to really, get better and better at over the years myself is trying to get into the mind of the person who's on the other end, trying to understand something that it's not what they're trained to do, and it's not what they're trained to understand. Especially when I deal with my design clients where they're very, I forget, right brain versus left brain, but I know I'm on one side, they're on the other for sure. And that's where I know I have to really practice patience with them, because I have to constantly remind myself, hey, they don't think the way you do. Their minds don't work the same way. They don't process information the same way.
I get it. I hear you guys. Again, I'm just going to stay quiet on this one.
No, I totally get where you're coming from. But what I'm trying to do is hopefully, explain in a way that helps you, I guess, feel better about it. I don't know.
I'm good. Trust me, I feel better about it. I hear all you guys, and
what the most important thing is, Mariette, is that I'm having a good hair day today. And that's really all that matters at the end of the day. Because, and I'm going to end the hangout on this note, it's what's on the outside that counts, because the insides are gross.
Get it. And Katie's going to have a good hair day too, so let's make sure we mention that.
That's my plan, my annual haircut.
Annual, nice. I should try that.
I do. I only get my hair cut once a year, and it's always during tax season. I'm low maintenance.
Excellent. As long as you don't only wash it when you get it cut.
No, I wash it, but I'm starting to get a lot more gray hair, so I think I'm going to have to step it up from the once a year so I can dye that stuff. I'm not ready.
Fair enough. All right, folks. Well, if anybody has any other questions, the Hangout page is there forever and ever and ever. So just feel free to post your questions and comments there, and we'll get in there and answer them. And maybe I'll just have to do a course on this at schoolofbookkeeping.com.
Yes.
Nice.
All right. You all have a great Friday, and don't forget Gina's Hangout's happening later on today, 2:30 Pacific, 5:30 Eastern. Figure it out if you live somewhere in between.
Nice. And come chat with me in the live chat.
That's right, Joanne's live chat, 12 o'clock Pacific, 3 o'clock Eastern.
Bye, guys.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye, y'all.